Thanks. So yes, I'm Mira Calix. I'm an artist and composer, and I work across several media. So I incorporate visual arts and electronics and classical instrumentation to make quite often site-specific installation pieces, but I also perform and present in more traditional concert halls and galleries and museums. And last year I presented a musical sculpture which was commissioned by the Mayor of London in partnership with the Natural History Museum and the Exhibition Road Cultural Group. And through that, I work closely with mineralogists at the museum, and my relationship with the Exhibition Road Cultural Group has continued, and that's how I happily got invited to contribute to TEDxAlbertopolis. So I'm trying to see where it is. So basically, that piece was a couple of years in the making. I had conceived of it before I contacted my partners, and the project for TEDxAlbertopolis is very, very different. So you can see it here in situ at Fairlop Waters. That's the final product, and this process here with TEDx was different in that they contacted me and they asked me if there was any particular area which was covered by many of the great institutions here that I'd been interested in pursuing. And as an artist, that meant I was spoilt for choice. But I'm working on a project for Sydney Festival 2015, and through that I've developed a keen interest in functional or special materials. And I was aware of Dr. Natalie Stingerlin, who is a reader in organic functional materials at Imperial College London in the Department of Materials. And fortunately for me, when the TEDx team contacted her, she immediately wanted to come in and collaborate. And what we first did was have some Skype meetings. Natalie was out of the country at the time, and we talked about her work, and her area is organic photovoltaic cells. And she arranged for me to go down to the lab and to actually meet her team and find out what that is. And for those of you who don't know, like me, just a few months ago, really OPV uses polymer layers, or active layers as they call them, to basically, and I must get the science bit right, turn sunlight or photons into electrons, and what they technically called holes, and then they're transformed and they basically arrive at contacts and turn into electricity. Now these materials are really low cost and they are really lightweight, and it's this part of the process that makes it something I think that could potentially be revolutionary in feeding our energy needs, and I use a lot of energy. So this is really exciting to me. Now, when I went down to the lab, as I said to you, I didn't have a preconception of what this piece would be. I was an artist as an explorer, in that I was really there to just hang out, which, you know, is something that scientists are maybe not normally open to do, but they really were, and they invited me into their space and they explained to me in really layman terms, because obviously my science background is limited, and we went through a step-by-step process and we actually made an active layer together. And they took me through all of the things that they do. And I went over to a microscope, and the first thing I saw was this, which is kind of lovely, but more or less what I expected to see. And that yellow tinge is the sort of solution of their active layer. And while I was looking through, I didn't notice that the technician, this is a super lovely microscope, was changing the focus. And so the next image I saw was this, which I kind of thought, wow, especially when you see it for yourself. And it's not what I expected of a crystalline structure. It's quite wild and it's quite abstract, and it's not perfectly formatted, and it's not what I expected to see. So I immediately asked if we could photograph this, and then I went away and I really just let my experience simmer, and I was working on other projects. So for me it was sort of coming back to what I'd experienced in the lab and how that could become an artwork. What would that mean? And I think what I realized is what really had struck with me, which sort of came to pass in the weeks after the visit, was how rigorous and how repetitive their process is in their experimentation, and that in order to make an artwork for the Royal Albert Hall and for TEDxAlbertopolis, I needed to kind of mirror this, and I needed to make a process-based piece. Now, I'm not an artist who normally works in process-based pieces, and this is quite a challenging idea to me. I'm normally very structured. I compose, I produce a score, I build environments. And so they had influenced me because the only thing that seemed honest was to create a process-based piece. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But really the other point that sort of came through during those weeks of simmering was that they were using sunlight to create electricity. And I felt that I needed to very directly use sunlight to create sound and movement. So I approached Ella Robson-Guilfoyle, who's a dancer and choreographer, and we met serendipitously here about a year ago. And I asked her to come in and work with me on this piece and to create a system. And so what we've done, or how this works, and as I said, the title is The Sun is the Queen of Torches, and it's meant to be evocative rather than illustrative of the work that they're doing, like the piece itself. The idea is incredibly simple, and what we'll do at Royal Albert Hall is actually cover as much of the glass as we're possibly allowed to in the space we're working in. And I will actually cut away at this sort of paper film according to this image and according to this sort of score, a visual score for want of a better word. And the scalpel that I'm using becomes my instrument, or my cello, or my guitar, and then I use computer software to actually process that sound. It's amplified, and in doing so, that creates a reaction with Ella. So we are metaphorically this active layer that Natalie Stingerlin and her team are working on. And we are electron and photon, and I just like saying that. But it just seems fun. But it's not supposed to be a demonstration. This isn't a display for the audience. What I'm trying to give them, and this is really key to creating an artwork from a scientific work, is that experience, that moment of joy that I had when I saw this. Because I had a little moment, and it's very different to what you're seeing here. So what I'm trying to express to them is that, and the inspiring work that they're doing, and the experimental nature of that work. So I went back to the lab, having sort of come up with this basic concept, and we refined it, and we looked at motivation for myself and for the dancer. And then I brought to them what I perceived to be as a huge problem, in that at the Royal Albert Hall, I'm not in a nice theatre like this. I'm actually more or less in a corridor, in the sense that the audience will be going straight through us to the bar. And as an artist, I'm normally really repelled by that kind of situation because it's uncontrollable, and I have all these forces that I can't control. So they always make me slightly uncomfortable. Bringing that problem to the scientists, they pointed out to me very quickly that they have the same problem. They have traps, what they call traps within their active layer, which cause the charges to get lost. And they immediately went, you know, your problem with the audience is our problem in finding the perfect active layer. Which was great, because obviously it meant scientists and artists have the same problems, but it also really altered my perspective on what I'd really seen to be a problem. And this takes me to this thing that we're supposed to be so very different, scientists and artists, but I think, you know, our methodology, our day-to-day practice, this kind of really pushing forward, really trying to make things change, and often having to be obtuse, and yet at the same time, you know, really obstinate to keep going. At the same time, we have to be open to influence, and we have to be absolutely, ultimately experimental. So hopefully that's what this work will be, and in that sense, it's truly a reflection of what they're doing. Thank you.